The humiliation wedding. The square was crowded that day, filled with laughter, shouts, and cruel eyes. The people had gathered not to celebrate love, but to enjoy a punishment. A young human man named Daniel was dragged forward, his wrists tied, guards pushing him into the center like a criminal. He was not a criminal, though. His crime was only this: he had insulted one of the local lords. The lord wanted revenge, not through death, but through shame. Make him suffer, the lord had said. Let him marry the alien slave, the one who smells the one sold for only $5. The crowd had cheered at those words, waiting for the show. Daniel stood tall, but his face was pale. He could hear whispers from all around. Look at him, punished with the worst bride in the city. She is less than an animal, not worth even a coin. This is better than killing him. He will suffer every day. The guards pulled a thin figure out from the shadows. She was small, covered in rags, her hands chained and her head lowered. Even from a distance, the smell of dirt and old wounds clung to her. The people laughed louder, pinching their noses, waving their hands as if to push the air away. That is her, someone shouted. The alien slave who was sold in the market for $5, cheaper than rotten food. Daniel looked at her. His heart twisted. Not from the smell, not from the shame, but from the way she trembled. Her shoulders were shaking as if the laughter and the cruel words were cutting her flesh. Her face was hidden behind a dirty cloth, her eyes downcast. The priest was forced to stand between them, holding a broken book. The wedding was quick, words mumbled, the crowd shouting insults at every line. Every "I do" was drowned out by mocking laughter. The people threw rotten fruit, hitting both Daniel and the alien girl. She flinched at every hit, but not once did she cry out. She only stood there, head low, silent like stone. When the priest declared them husband and wife, the people erupted. With joy, but it was the joy of cruelty, not celebration. Some spat at the ground, others shouted, "He is ruined forever." A human married to filth. Let him live in shame. The Lord smiled from his high seat. His revenge was complete. He had taken Daniel's pride, his honor, and turned it into dirt. The guards pushed the girl into Daniel's arms. Her body was thin, almost weightless. Her skin had marks, old scars, fresh bruises, reminders of chains and whips. She did not meet his eyes. She only whispered something so soft that no one else heard. Her voice was cracked, weak, like broken glass. "Please, do not send me back." Daniel froze. For the first time, her words reached through the noise of the crowd. He looked at her closely. She was not just a punishment, not just a slave. She was alive, scared, and begging. And in her quiet voice, he heard something more than fear. He heard the weight of a life filled with suffering. He took her hand, ignoring the smell, ignoring the whispers. The crowd laughed even louder, mistaking his action for defeat. But inside Daniel, something began to burn. He had been humiliated, yes, but he saw something the others refused to see. This alien girl was broken, and yet she still stood. She was still breathing, still fighting in silence. As they walked away, the people continued to mock them. Rotten food fell on their backs. Cruel words followed them like knives. Daniel kept his head high, though inside he was boiling, not from shame, but from anger at the cruelty around him. At the edge of the square, the girl stumbled, her chains heavy. He caught her before she fell. For a moment, her eyes lifted and met his. They were not human eyes. They glowed faintly, dim from hunger and fear, but still shining with something deep. Daniel's breath caught. In that single look, he saw pain. Yes, but also a desperate hope. She was waiting to see if he would be like all the others, if he would treat her as less than nothing. The guards laughed as they left, shouting, "Enjoy your new bride, human. May her stink keep you awake forever." The streets emptied slowly, leaving silence behind. Daniel and the girl walked side by side, the chains clinking with every step. She did not speak, only kept her head lowered. Her body shook as if she expected a blow at any moment. When they reached his small home, Daniel opened the door for her. She hesitated, eyes wide, as if doors had never been opened for her before. She stepped inside slowly, clutching her rags. For the first time there, Was no crowd, no laughter, no Lord watching, just the two of them, human and alien, joined in a marriage meant to destroy him. But as Daniel closed the door, his mind was filled with one thought. The world wanted him broken. The world wanted him humiliated. But maybe, just maybe, this punishment was not what it seemed. Maybe this slave girl with scars and trembling hands would change his fate in ways no one expected. And as he glanced at her again, he whispered in his heart, "This is not the end of me. This is the beginning of something they will regret." The shackles at home. The house was small, made of old wood and stone. But to the alien girl it looked like another prison. Daniel untied the ropes on his wrists and then turned to the girl. Her chains still rattled, iron biting her thin arms and ankles. She stood near the door, her head low as if afraid to even breathe too loud. Daniel sighed. He had never asked for this, never wanted a wife chosen as punishment. Yet the memory of her whisper in the square echoed in his head. "Please do not send me back." Those words clung to him stronger than the insults from the crowd. He lit a small lamp. The soft glow filled the room. The girl flinched at the light, curling her arms close as if protecting herself. Daniel noticed her skin, pale and bruised, marked with scars that told stories no words ever could. "Sit," Daniel said quietly, pointing to a chair. But she did not move. Her eyes darted nervously, waiting for a command followed by pain. When he stepped closer, she pressed against the wall. Trembling like a cornered animal, Daniel realized she had never been treated as a person, only as property. He moved back, raising his hands. "I will not hurt you," he said slowly. His voice was firm but gentle. She blinked at him, confusion flickering in her glowing eyes. He prepared a piece of bread and placed it on the table. He also poured water into a cup. Her eyes followed the food, but her body did not move. Hunger was sharp in her stare, but fear was sharper. Daniel sighed again and placed the food closer to her, then stepped away. For long minutes she stood frozen. Finally, slowly, she reached forward. Her thin fingers shook as she grabbed the bread. She bit into it quickly, as if afraid it would be taken away. The water followed, spilling down her chin, but she drank it greedily. Daniel watched in silence, his chest tight. This was no punishment bride. This was a survivor, beaten and starved until even food felt like a dream. When she finished, she lowered, her head again, whispering, "Thank you." Her voice was rough, unused, but it was the first time she had spoken more than a broken plea. Daniel nodded, but before he could reply, a knock came at the door. It was the neighbor, a heavy man with cruel eyes. He leaned on the doorframe and smirked. "So it's true," he said. "They gave you the stinking slave. What a fine wife you have, human. Worth less than garbage, huh?" Daniel's jaw tightened, but he said nothing. The neighbor pushed further. "Be careful, she is cursed. I heard her kind bring misfortune. Some even eat flesh. If you're smart, you'll tie her outside like a dog." The girl heard every word. Her shoulders shook, shame burning her thin body. Daniel looked at her, then back at the neighbor. "She stays inside," he said firmly, closing the door. The man laughed outside, his voice fading, but his cruelty lingering in the air. Silence filled the room again. The girl's eyes watered, though she tried to hide it, Daniel noticed. He wanted to say something, but the words felt heavy. Instead, he picked up the key hanging from the chains and slowly bent down. She flinched hard, expecting pain, but instead of hurting her, he unlocked her wrists. The iron fell with a dull sound, leaving red marks on her skin. She stared at him wide-eyed, too shocked to even move. "You're free here," Daniel said. "No chains in my house." Her lips trembled, but she said nothing. Instead, her hand brushed the marks on her wrist as if testing if this was real. She sat down finally, her shoulders loosening for the first time. Night came. Daniel laid a blanket on the floor for himself, giving her the small bed. She looked at him in disbelief. "Why?" she whispered, her voice like broken glass. "Because you need it more," Daniel answered simply. She lay down slowly, still watching him as if he were a puzzle she could not solve. For so long she had known only pain, but now she was given food, Freedom from chains and a bed. It did not make sense, and yet, as her eyes grew heavy, a single thought echoed in her mind. Maybe this human is not like the others. Daniel stayed awake for hours, listening to the faint sound of her breathing. His life had been ruined in the eyes of the world, but as he watched her sleep, he wondered if fate had given him something no one else could see. The moonlight spilled through the window, falling across her face. For a brief moment, the alien glow in her skin looked soft, almost beautiful. Daniel whispered to himself, "This is no punishment." But outside, whispers in the dark streets grew louder. People were already planning to mock him again. And somewhere, her old master had heard the news too. He was not done with her, not yet. A slave's secrets. The days passed slowly, but each day revealed something new. Daniel noticed small details about the alien girl. She woke before sunrise, quietly cleaning his little house as if it belonged to a master, not her. She never ate, unless he told her. And even then, she ate like a thief. Fast, hiding every bite as though it might be stolen. Her silence spoke louder than words. Daniel wanted to ask her name, but every time he tried, she lowered her head, lips sealed tight. It was as if she had forgotten she was allowed to have one. At night, the truth came in fragments. He would wake to soft cries in the dark, her body twisting as if caught in invisible chains, her voice whispering broken words. "No, not again. Please, don't hurt me." Daniel would sit up, watching her tremble in the corner of the bed, her arms wrapped around herself like shields. One night, unable to take her suffering any longer, Daniel reached out. He gently placed his hand on her shoulder. She flinched hard, eyes snapping open, glowing faintly in fear. But when she saw him, her breath slowed. His hand did not strike. His eyes did not burn with cruelty. "Who hurt you?" Daniel asked softly. Her lips trembled. She tried to look away, but the words spilled out like blood from an old wound. "Masters. Many. They chained me, used me, left me hungry, left me bleeding. I was not wife, not servant, not even animal. I was nothing." Her voice cracked, tears running down her cheeks. She covered her face, ashamed. "Even now I stink of them. That is why they laugh at you. I am your punishment." Daniel's chest tightened. Anger burned hot inside him, but it was not for her. It was for those who had treated her this way. He wanted to shout, to fight, but he forced himself calm. Instead, he said, "You are not nothing." She shook her head quickly. "No. You do not see I was sold for $5, cheaper than broken tools. They laughed as they pushed me into your arms." Daniel leaned closer. His voice was steady. "Let them laugh. Their laughter means nothing. I see more in you than they ever will." She blinked at him, her glowing eyes wide. For a moment, silence filled the room. Then slowly, as if testing a forbidden truth, she whispered, "Why? Why are you kind to me?" Daniel had no answer. He could only say the truth. "Because you deserve it." The words struck her deeper than any chain ever had. She turned her face away, but he saw her shoulders shaking, not from fear this time, but from something else, something fragile like hope. From that night onward, she began to trust him in small ways. She spoke more, though her voice was still soft. She told him about the mines where she had been forced to work, carrying stones until her back broke. She told him about the cages, where she was left without food for days. She told him about the whips, the laughter, the cruel games of masters who treated her like dirt beneath their boots. Every story carved deeper scars in Daniel's heart. Yet he listened. He did not turn away. He did not pity her with empty eyes. He only listened and gave her silence where her truth could rest. One evening, as they sat by the small fire, she reached out without thinking. Her fingers brushed his hand lightly. She pulled back quickly, ashamed. I should not." But Daniel caught her hand gently, his grip firm yet warm. "You can," he said. Her eyes glowed brighter in the firelight, soft and trembling. She had never been allowed to touch without punishment, never been allowed to hold anything with safety. In that moment, she felt something she had never known. She felt human. The days outside were not kind. The neighbors continued to whisper. Some spat at Daniel in the street, calling him slave husband. Children mocked the alien girl, throwing stones when she passed each time Daniel stood by her, his silence stronger than their noise. But behind closed doors, something was changing. The girl no longer hid in the corner. She no longer waited for permission to breathe. Slowly, her back straightened. Slowly, her eyes began to lift. One night, as the fire burned low, she whispered her name for the first time. Lyra, she said softly. Her voice shook, but her eyes met his. My name is Lyra. Daniel repeated it, letting it settle in the air. Lyra, he said. A name worth more than gold. She smiled then, small, broken, but real. It was the first smile he had seen for Daniel. The punishment that was meant to break him was turning into something unexpected. The girl once sold for $5 was slowly becoming the center of his life, and yet he knew this fragile piece could not last. Shadows moved outside, whispers, carried in the night her old master had not forgotten, and neither had the world that laughed at their union. The secret of her past was now open between them, but new dangers were waiting, and Daniel realized protecting her was no longer duty. It was something far deeper. Whispers of kindness. Morning light spilled into the small house, catching on the dust in the air. Lyra, no longer just the slave, was sweeping the floor silently. Her movements were graceful, careful, as if each step might anger someone unseen. Daniel watched her from the table, wondering how a girl who had lived through so much cruelty could still move with such quiet strength. In the market, however, there was no quiet. The people had not forgotten. They pointed, they laughed, they whispered. There he is, the man who married the stinking slave. His punishment walks beside him. Daniel ignored them, but Lyra shrank under their eyes, her hood pulled low, her shoulders hunched. She had carried heavy stones all her life, yet the weight of shame was heavier. Daniel stopped at a stall and picked fresh bread. The shopkeeper sneered, For you, 5 coins, but for her I wouldn't sell even crumbs. Lyra's hands trembled. She reached to pull Daniel away, but instead Daniel pushed the coins forward and said, It's for both of us, and we will eat together. The crowd nearby chuckled, but some turned their heads, surprised at his words. No one had ever spoken like that for a slave. Back home, Daniel broke the bread in half. He handed the larger piece to Lyra first. She froze, staring at it. For me, she whispered. He nodded. You need it more. She held the bread close to her chest, as if it were treasure. Tears glimmered in her glowing eyes. She had been given food before, but never respect. That night, as they sat near the fire, Lyra whispered, Why do you not hate me? They gave me to you as punishment. Everyone laughs, yet you feed me first. Daniel's gaze was steady. Because I don't see punishment. I see someone worth saving. Her lips parted. She wanted to speak, but no words came. Her whole life, she had been treated as less than dirt. Now a single human told her she was worth something. Her heart felt strange, heavy, but also warm. The whispers of kindness spread beyond the walls of their home. A child who once threw stones at Lyra now stared curiously, wondering why the slave smiled faintly when standing beside the human. A woman at the well muttered, Strange, she does not look so ugly anymore. Her glow seems brighter. People began to notice changes, though they still mocked. Their laughter was weaker, but kindness brought danger too. One evening, as Daniel walked through the market, a man blocked his path. It was Joran, one of the Lord's enforcers. His voice was sharp. You are making a mistake, human. That creature belongs to chains, not to you. Show too much kindness, and others will follow. Do you want rebellion? Daniel did not flinch. I only want peace in my home, Joran sneered. Peace with slaves is impossible. They bite the hand that feeds. Remember this, her kind are cursed, and you will regret protecting her. The threat lingered as Daniel returned home. Lyra noticed his silence. "What happened?" she asked softly. He shook his head, not wanting to worry her, but she pressed. "Please, tell me." "Finally," Daniel said. "They do not like that I treat you as human. They want you back in chains." Her body stiffened, her eyes lowering to the floor. "Then you must let me go," she whispered. Her voice cracked. "I bring you danger. I am only shame they will hurt you for me." Daniel stepped forward quickly, tilting her chin so her eyes met his. "Listen, Lyra, you are not shame. You are not curse. I will not send you away." Her glowing eyes shimmered, wide and searching. For a moment she could not breathe, then her lips trembled. "No one has ever said that to me." The night grew quiet, but her heart was louder than the silence. For the first time she felt like she belonged somewhere, even if only in one man's home. Days later, an event shook everything. At the market, someone threw rotten fruit at Lyra again. This time, Daniel caught the man's wrist before it landed. His grip was firm, his eyes burning. "Enough," he said. His voice carried through the square. The crowd went silent, never expecting him to defend her so openly. Lyra's chest rose and fell quickly, her glowing eyes wide. She had never been defended before, never been worth the risk of angering others. That single moment carved deep inside her soul. She whispered, when they were alone, "Why risk yourself?" Daniel's answer was simple but strong. "Because you are mine, not as a slave, not as punishment, but as someone who deserves to live without chains." Her tears flowed then, falling silently. She pressed her forehead to his hand, whispering, "If you keep me, I will never betray you. I will stay silent. Loyal, yours." The words were soft, but they struck like thunder. Daniel realized the punishment given to break him had only bound them closer. The lords may have laughed, but kindness was turning their joke into something dangerous, something powerful. And outside, in the dark, unseen eyes watched from the shadows, her old master had heard the whispers too, and he was not pleased. The breaking point. The sun was setting when the trouble began. Daniel and Lyra had just returned from the market. The day had been quiet, but Daniel felt a heavy tension in the air. Lyra walked beside him, her hood pulled low, eyes lowered. She had grown stronger these past days. Her steps no longer dragged. Her voice no longer broke each time she spoke. Yet fear was still there, hiding deep inside. As they reached the door, a shadow blocked their path. Joran, the enforcer, stood waiting. His armor glinted, his mouth twisted into a cruel smile. And behind him stood two guards holding whips. "Enough games, human," Joran said. "Return the alien slave. She was never yours to keep. The Lord has decided. She belongs back in the chains." Lyra froze, her body shook violently. Her hands gripped her rags as if to stop herself from collapsing. Daniel stepped in front of her, his body a shield. His voice was steady. "She is my wife now. The Lord himself declared it in the square. You cannot take her." The guards laughed. "That was punishment, not blessing," one sneered. "You were meant to suffer, not protect her." Daniel clenched his fists. "If punishment means she is mine, then I accept it, and no one will take her from me." The words shocked Lyra. Her glowing eyes widened. She whispered so low only he could hear, You would fight for me?" Joran's face darkened. He raised his hand, and the guard stepped forward. "Do not be foolish, human. You are weak. She is filth. We will take her now, and you will thank us later." Daniel's heart pounded. He knew he was outnumbered, but the thought of Lyra being dragged away, of her screams in the night, of her tears behind iron bars, he could not allow it. He stood firm, blocking their way. "Touch her," Daniel said, "and you fight me." The guards laughed again, raising their whips. Lyra grabbed Daniel's sleeve, trembling. "Please, don't. They will kill you. Let them take me. I will survive." Her voice cracked. "I always survive." Daniel turned his head, looking at her. His eyes burned with fire. "No," he said firmly. "You will not survive chains again. Not while I breathe. The guards struck. One whip lashed across Daniel's arm. Pain burned, but he did not move. He swung his fist, striking the guard hard enough to make him stumble. The crowd began to gather, whispers rising. Some cheered for Duran. Others watched in silence. The second guard lunged, but before the blow could land, something unexpected happened. Lyra stepped in front of Daniel, her small body trembling but unyielding. She spread her arms wide. "If you hurt him, you hurt me," she cried. Her voice echoed strong and desperate. The crowd gasped, never expecting a slave to speak with such fire. Duran's eyes narrowed. "So, the little worm has grown a tongue," he sneered. He raised his hand to strike her. Daniel caught, his wrist mid-air, gripping it with all his strength. "No," Daniel said, his voice cold and deadly serious. For a moment, silence held the square. Then a murmur rose. People who once laughed now whispered, "Did you see? She protected him. She stood for him. Maybe she is not filth after all." Duran pulled his hand free, glaring. "This is not over," he growled. "You will regret this, human, both of you." With that, he turned, the guards following him. The crowd scattered slowly, but the whispers did not fade. Inside the house, Daniel's arm bled from the lash. Lyra hurried to fetch water, her hands shaking as she cleaned the wound. Tears streamed down her cheeks. "Why did you do this?" she whispered. "They will come again, stronger. They will destroy you, all because of me." Daniel winced at the sting but held her trembling hands. "Listen to me, Lyra," he said firmly. "I would rather bleed than let them chain you again. You are not a slave in this house, not now, not ever." Her glowing eyes flooded with tears. She fell to her knees before him, clutching his hands to her forehead. "If you keep me," she whispered, her voice breaking, "I will be yours forever. I will cook, I will clean, I will stay silent, I will give you everything. Just never send me away." Daniel's throat tightened. He pulled her gently up. "Lyra, I don't want your silence or your chains. I want you to live free, with me." Her tears fell harder, but for the first time, they were not only of fear, they were of something new, hope. Outside, the night settled over the town, but in the shadows, Duran's words lingered. This was only the beginning. The lords would not tolerate defiance. Daniel had made a choice, and it would change everything. The breaking point had come, and now, neither Daniel nor Lyra could turn back. The stand of a human. The night after, the fight was heavy with silence. Daniel sat at the table, his arm bandaged from the whip. Across the room, Lyra sat curled near the small fire. Her glowing eyes watched him, filled with worry and guilt. She had begged him again to let her leave, to save himself, but he had refused. His mind was set by morning news had spread like wildfire. The market buzzed with whispers. The human fought the enforcers. He stood for the alien slave. They say she shielded him with her own body. What had once been laughter was now curiosity. A few even muttered in secret. Maybe the punishment was not punishment at all. But the lords did not laugh. They called a gathering, and Daniel was summoned to the square, the same place where he had been humiliated during the wedding. Now it was filled again, people pressing in close, waiting to see what would happen next. Daniel stood tall in the center, Lyra behind him, her hood drawn, Duran and the guards surrounded, the Lord's platform. The Lord himself rose, his robe glistening, his voice sharp. "Human, you have broken your place. You were given a slave as punishment, yet you dare to defend her, you dare to strike my men." The crowd murmured, tension heavy. Daniel's voice cut through it, strong and steady. "You call her a slave, but I call her my wife. You sold her for $5, but she is worth more than all your gold." The words rippled through the crowd like fire. Some gasped, some laughed nervously, but many fell silent, listening. The Lord sneered. "She is nothing but filth, a creature to be chained, and you are nothing but a fool." He raised his hand. "Take her and flog him until he remembers his place." The guard stepped forward, but before they could reach, Lyra suddenly ran in front of Daniel, her small frame shaking but her voice strong. "No," She cried, "He is not fool, he is the only one who has treated me as living, not as dirt." Gasps echoed around the square. Never had a slave dared speak against the Lord. Her glowing eyes burned with a fierce light, her voice trembling but clear. "If you take me, then kill me, for I will not go back to chains." The Lord's face turned red with fury, but the people were stirred, whispers spread quickly. She would rather die than return to chains. Did you hear her voice? It was not weak. Maybe they are right. Maybe slaves are not. What we thought? Daniel stepped forward, placing his hand firmly on Lyra's shoulder. His voice carried strong. "You call me punished, but look around. Do you see her breaking? No, she stands, she speaks, she shines brighter than your gold. If this is punishment, then I accept it gladly." The crowd erupted into louder whispers, some even nodding. The Lord's grip on their minds trembled, and he knew it. His eyes narrowed. "Enough!" he barked. "Silence them both!" The guards surged forward again, whips ready. But this time Daniel did not wait. He stood firm, fists clenched, his body blocked every strike meant for Lyra. And when one whip cracked, Lyra herself grabbed it, pulling hard, shocking the guard with her strength born of desperation. The people gasped again. Some even cheered softly, courage rising where fear once ruled. For the first time, a human and an alien slave were standing together against power. Daniel shouted, his voice shaking the square. "You think I am weak? But I am human. And humans do not bow when they know what is right." The crowd roared with energy. Some clapped, others shouted agreement. The Lord slammed his fist on the platform, furious. "This will not end here," he hissed before storming away with his men. The square slowly emptied, leaving Daniel and Lyra standing together in the middle, breathing hard, bruised but unbroken. Back in the safety of their small home, Lyra's hands trembled as she touched the marks on Daniel's arms. Her tears fell silently. "Why do you fight so hard for me?" she asked, her voice raw. "I was punishment, I was filth, I was nothing." Daniel took her hands, pressing them against his chest. "Because now, you are everything, and I will never let them take you again." Her lips trembled, and she pressed her forehead to his chest, whispering, "Then I am yours. Truly yours, until the end." The firelight flickered over them. Their bond, once forced, had become unshakable. But outside, in the darkness, the Lord's fury grew. Plans were being made. Stronger forces prepared. The storm was not over. It was only gathering. The stand of a human had shaken the town, but soon it would shake the whole order of power, and neither Daniel nor Lyra knew what price they would have to pay next. Happier than ever. The town was restless. Whispers traveled faster than wind. Some said the human had lost his mind. Others whispered that perhaps he had found something greater than fear. Daniel and Lyra had become the center of every tongue. Their defiance in the square had cracked the silence people had carried for years, but with whispers came danger. The Lord could not accept humiliation. He sent word to his soldiers, "Break the human, chain the alien again. Let all see what happens when one forgets his place." That night, as Daniel and Lyra sat by the fire, the knock came heavy on the door. Daniel opened it to find soldiers lined in the street, torches burning. The leader's voice was sharp. "Surrender the slave, and we will leave you alive." Lyra's breath caught. She gripped Daniel's arm tightly, her glowing eyes wide with terror. But Daniel stood firm. "She is not a slave, she is my wife, and she stays with me." The soldiers surged forward. Daniel fought with every ounce of his strength. His fists met iron, his body slammed against wood. Lyra screamed, running. To shield him, one soldier struck her down, and Daniel's rage burned hotter than fire. The fight shook the small house. Neighbors gathered, some shouting, some too afraid. But then something unexpected happened. One man stepped forward, then another. "Enough!" they cried. "This is not justice, this is cruelty." The crowd swelled with voices. Women held torches high, children shouted from rooftops. Soldiers hesitated, their orders suddenly heavy against the weight of the people's anger. Lyra struggled to her feet, blood on her lip but fire in her eyes. She stood beside Daniel and raised her voice. "I was sold for $5, treated worse than an animal. But this man, this human, gave me bread, gave me a name. gave me life. Tell me, who is the true master here? The one who chains or the one who frees?" Her words cut through the night like lightning. Silence followed, then a wave of murmurs. The crowd began chanting, "Free! Free! Free!" The soldiers looked at each other nervously. The leader barked, "Silence them!" But his voice was drowned. Out Daniel stepped forward, bruised and bleeding, his arm around Lyra, and shouted, "You call this punishment, but look at us now. Does this look like shame? Or does it look like victory?" The people roared. For the first time, laughter was not mocking, it was proud, it was defiance. The soldiers, outnumbered by voices and will, retreated into the night, carrying the Lord's fury with them. When the dust settled, Daniel and Lyra stood in the square. The same square where their humiliation wedding had taken place. But now the air was different. Instead of rotten fruit, the people offered bread. Instead of insults, they offered silence filled with respect. Lyra's chains, once symbols of her curse, lay broken on the ground. Daniel picked them up, held them high, and then threw them into the fire. The iron hissed and melted, smoke rising into the sky. He turned to Lyra, his voice steady but filled with emotion. "No one owns you now, not the lords, not the chains, not even me. You are free. But if you choose to stay, stay as my equal, not as my punishment." Her glowing eyes shimmered with tears. She stepped forward, her hand trembling as she touched his cheek. "I was sold for $5, but with you I am priceless," she whispered. Her voice broke, but her smile was brighter than any flame. The crowd, once cruel, now stood silent. Some bowed their heads, ashamed of their past laughter. Others whispered to their children, "Remember this day when a human stood, when a slave spoke, and chains broke forever." As night fell, Daniel and Lyra returned to their home, not as punished and punisher, not as master and slave, but as two souls bound by choice. She no longer shrank in shadows. She walked beside him, shoulders straight, eyes glowing not with fear but with life. Inside, she prepared a small meal, her movements no longer trembling. When Daniel sat, she placed the food in front of him first, but he shook his head, pushing it back toward her. "Together," he said. They ate side by side, laughter soft between them. Later, as they lay in the quiet, Lyra whispered, "I thought I was nothing. I thought chains were all I would ever know. But you gave me something I cannot name." Daniel pulled her close. "It is not punishment," he said gently. "It is love." Outside, the stars burned bright. The world was still dangerous. The Lord still plotted. But inside their small home, there was warmth stronger than fear. For the first time, Lyra slept without trembling, and Daniel, once humiliated, once mocked, closed his eyes knowing he was not broken. He was happier than ever.